大家好，歡迎嚟到我哋中倫倫敦小貼士。我係中倫律師樓嘅資深律師 Cherry 黃律師。咁今日好榮幸可以邀請到我哋律師樓常駐香港嘅黎律師同 Overall Router 嘅註冊會計師 Mark， 同我哋大家分享下有關英國買賣樓宇常見嘅稅務問題。咁而家我哋就將時間交俾黎律師同
Mark。Hello， 大家好，我係黎律師 Scholar。咁我係英國 Register 嘅律師，而家駐守喺香港。咁今日咧，我同 Mark 就會講解一下喺香港買家常見嘅稅務問題。Let's welcome Mark.
Hi everyone. So to introduce myself, my name is Mark Jovanovic and I'm a chartered tax advisor in the UK. I've worked in tax for a number of years now and tend to specialise in personal tax, dealing with both UK tax residents and non-UK tax residents. I specialise in property tax, stamp duty, land tax, and inheritance tax. As well as myself, we have a team of chartered tax advisors and accountants. So between us, we're able to provide a complete tax and accounting advisory service for you.
咁我哋咧喺買英國嘅樓宇，其實最主要嘅稅項咧就係有3種嘅，就係 SDLT 土地印花稅、Capital Gains Tax 資產增值稅同埋 Income Tax 就係呢個租金嘅收入稅嘅。咁我哋今日咧就會講下呢3方面嘅稅務問題。咁第一我哋首先第一 part 咧就會講一下 SDLT 就係土地印花稅嘅。Okay, Mark. So, if the buyer is buying the property in his sole name, but his spouse owns property somewhere else, would they be able to pay the lower rate SDLT?
So, for the purpose of the 3% stamp duty land tax surcharge, married couples and those in civil partnerships are both treated as a single person. As a result of this, it will prevent you from being able to take advantage of the lower stamp duty land tax rates. So, by way of an example, if you have Mr. and Mrs. Smith who are planning to purchase a house, Mr. Smith, who does not own any of the property, but Mrs. Smith owns a small investment property that is rented out, Mr. Smith might decide to buy the property in his sole name. HMRC would look at whether Mrs. Smith would have to pay the higher rates if she bought the house. As the answer to that is yes, then unfortunately the higher rates would apply.
Thank you, Mark. What if the situation is a bit different? If the buyer is buying the property as a buy-to-let property, but doesn't hold any other property globally, would they be able to pay the lower rate SDLT, or do they have to pay the higher rate?
Okay, so where the property being purchased will be the only property interest the individual has in a dwelling, the higher rates of SDLT will not apply. This is regardless of whether this is being purchased as a buy-to-let or as their own home. But again, it's important to take the interests of any spouse into consideration.
Thank you. So what if the buyer is buying the property as a replacement main residence and they are using the previous main home as a rental property, which is being rented out to other people? Would they pay the higher rate or the lower rate?
So in this instance, the higher rates of SDLT would apply. And this is because in order for it to qualify as a replacement of the main residence, the previous main residence must be disposed of either 3 years prior to the new property being purchased or within 3 years of the new property being purchased.
Thank you, Mark. 咁我哋下一條問題咧就係關於 assignment 嘅。咁 assignment 咧就係轉讓嘅意思。咁轉讓咧就係話如果你喺未交樓之前，你買咗個物業想轉讓俾其他人，或者一個之前嘅買家買咗個物業喺未交樓之前想轉讓俾你，咁你會需要俾乜嘢 percent 嘅印花稅咧？咁我哋而家咧就會請 Mark 解答一下嘅。Okay, Mark. So the next question would be, if the buyer is buying the property by way of an assignment, would the ultimate buyer, the end buyer, pay the SDLT based on the contract rate or the assignment rate?
Okay, so the ultimate purchaser will generally pay stamp duty land tax on whatever they pay under the original contract, plus any other amounts payable for the assignment of rights. There's slightly different rules for transactions with connected companies, but we won't go into that today as it gets quite complex, but it's just something to bear in mind.
咁我哋呢一 part 咧就講完呢個 SDLT 即係土地印花稅嘅問題啦。咁我哋咧就會開始講一講呢個海外額外2% 嘅印花稅。咁我相信大家都清楚啦，知道如果咧你喺交樓之前嘅1年或者交樓嘅之後嘅1年喺英國住滿183日嘅話咧，你就係唔算做海外居民，所以咧你係唔需要俾呢2% 額外嘅印花稅嘅。咁咧我哋而家就可以討論一下喺咩情況之下你係需要俾額外2% 咧？喺咩情況之下你係唔需要俾呢額外嘅2% 嘅？ Okay, Mark, the next question would be about the overseas surcharge. So, if the buyer stays in the UK for more than 183 days within a year from completion, but holds a tourism visa or a spouse visa, would they need to pay the 2% surcharge?
So it's important to note, first of all, that stamp duty land tax has its own residency test, which is separate to test used for other taxes in the UK, such as income tax or capital gains tax. For stamp duty land tax, you're basically looking at a 2-year period straddling either side of the property purchase date. And in that 2-year period, if you're in the UK for 183 days, then you'll be classed as UK tax resident for stamp duty land tax purposes. So as such, the type of visa held is not relevant. If the number of days exceeds the 183 threshold, then the surcharge would not apply. So that's the key thing. It's the number of days that you're in the UK.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So we know that the type of visa held is not relevant. So what about the type of passport? If if the buyer holds a UK passport but lives elsewhere, so if they don't live in the UK, do they need to pay the 2% surcharge?
So as with the previous example, it's purely the number of days the individual spends in the UK during that 2-year period straddling the effective date of the property purchase. As such, the surcharge will apply where the number of days is not met, regardless of what passport the individual may hold.
Okay, thank you. So what about the overseas surcharge if they're buying under a company name? If they're buying under a company name, do they need to pay the 2% surcharge?
Okay, so generally, a company that is UK resident will not be subject to that surcharge. However, there are 2 scenarios where a company will be deemed non-UK resident. And this is firstly, where a company is incorporated outside of the UK with its centre of management and control outside of the UK. And the second one is where the company is UK tax resident, but is a close company controlled by non-UK residents. And by close company, we mean a company controlled by 5 or fewer individuals or any number of shareholder directors.
All right, thank you, Mark, for all your advice regarding the 2% surcharge. So we are going to move on to the next section, which is the investment property. 好啦，咁好多香港嘅買家咧，可能買咗個英國物業嘅話咧，都係諗住可能打算租出去嘅。咁我哋咧就會想知道，如果我哋將個 investment property 租出去嘅時候咧，其實需要有啲乜嘢稅項係需要注意嘅咧？咁其實咧有2個稅項係需要注意嘅，就係叫 rental income tax， 即係呢個租金嘅收入稅啦，同埋當你賣個物業出去嘅時候咧，就會有呢個資產增值稅。which is capital gain tax。咁我哋咧而家就會請 Mark 解答一下喺呢2個稅項係喺有咩情況之下需要俾嘅。Okay, Mark. So in regards to the rental income tax, what tax do I need to pay when I rent my property out, and at what percentage?
Okay, so assuming the property is held in your own name and not in a limited company, it will be liable to income tax. The current rates for the tax year starting 6th of April 2022 for rental profits are the first £37,700 of income is taxed at 20%, and this is known as your basic rate band. The next £112,300 is taxed at 40%, and this is known as your higher rate band. Any further income after that is taxed at 45%, and this is known as the additional rate band. It's important to note, for these purposes, all income, rental income, and any other income from different sources is added together. So by way of an example, if somebody already receives a salary of £55,000 for the year, say, any rental profits on top of that will immediately be charged at 40%. So just to be clear on that.
Great, thank you. So what about if I have a UK property as an investment property, but I don't live in the UK? For example, if I live in Hong Kong, do I still need to pay income tax on that rental income?
Yeah, so non-UK residents who have income arising in the UK are liable to UK tax on their UK income. So yeah, they would be liable to UK tax on that income.
Thank you, that's clear, very clear, Mark. Okay, so for the next bit, it will be about the tax if I sell my property. So what tax do I need to pay when I sell my UK property, and at what percentage?
So the sale of UK property that has been held as an investment is liable to capital gains tax. The gains on residential property is currently liable to tax at 18% and 28%, whereas commercial property and land is liable to tax at slightly lower rates of 10% and 20%. However, when you're calculating the gain for non-residents, there are complex rules that exist where the residential property has been owned since before April 2015, or for commercial property before April 2019.
Thank you. So if the buyer is having a investment property, obviously there will be expenses, and a lot of the buyers wonder whether they can use these expenses to offset their tax liabilities. So the common question would be, can I use my mortgage payment, any pension scheme or insurance policy to reduce my overall tax liabilities?
Okay, so with regard to mortgage payments, this is a yes and no answer. The capital repayments towards the mortgage are not deductible against your tax liabilities. However, the interest paid is able to give you what's known as a 20% tax reducer against your rental profits income for the year. So where there are insufficient profits to utilise the interest, it's carried forward and used in future years, so it's not lost. With pension contributions, these are not an allowable deduction from your rental income, but in some cases, they're able to extend the basic rate tax band, which basically means you'll pay more tax at 20% before the 40% rates come in. With insurance premiums, if these are for buildings or contents cover relating to the property that you're renting out, these are an allowable expense, but things like life insurance wouldn't be allowable.
Thank you very much, Mark, for the detailed advice in regards to SDLT, capital gains tax and rental income tax. 咁好啦，我哋今個 video 相信好香港嘅買家都會清楚知道喺英國買樓嘅時候咧有啲乜嘢稅項嘅事務需要注意啦。咁最主要咧，我哋summary 就係需要俾呢個土地印花稅啦，呢個資產嘅增值稅啦，同埋 rental income tax， 即係你嘅租金嘅收入稅嘅。咁希望大家呢個 video 可以幫到大家。
好啦，咁今日同大家分享嘅英國買賣樓宇有關嘅稅務問題嘅快問快答就結束啦。咁如果有任何問題咧，歡迎大家隨時聯絡我哋。拜拜。